Hey, and welcome back to the DC Stewart Show Podcast featuring my kinfolk Isaiah and Najee. Najee will be rejoining us on Monday. He is away on assignment this weekend. We really enjoyed a Sports Pack weekend, and we did our live stream earlier covering the Georgia-Alabama game. Alabama came out to be the victor in that game, and that was well-deserved because Alabama brought more intensity to that game, more physicality, and a better strategy. So Georgia actually got beat. Looks like they're going to be repositioned on the top 10. We'll see tomorrow. All of the polls are going to come out tomorrow, I believe tomorrow afternoon. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Miami's going to sit still at number 2. As you can see, I got my Miami Canes t-shirt on, the 305, hitting it hard. You know, going all in, called the U, because it's all about the U, baby. I got my guy Isaiah here with me, and he's got on a green shirt, so that must means he's got a lot of green in the bank. And is that right, Isaiah?
Don't be putting me out there like that. Keep my lips sealed.
Well, I'm gonna make sure your lips keep sealed because we don't want to give away that secret. But we're back at you again because we're going to be going over a top 10 safeties list of all time from the NFL, the GOATs of all time. Top 10 safety from Freebird Tony Martinez. Tony put together a really solid list. I first saw it and I was like, wow, this is a kick butt list. And then Isaiah took a look at it. And he said the same thing. He said, man, wow, that's a badass list. So we're here to discuss that list today, you, the viewer. And please join us because we'd love to have you on because that's what it's all about. We're all family. And I'd love to have you guys comment on some of the players that Freebird Tony picked out for his list. And we'll go from there. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that like button because that helps the algorithm help us. And each time the algorithm is helping us, we can put out more quality content for you and add more to our social media. And we got some upcoming social media projects in the works right now. So we'll keep you posted on that. So where the party at, Isaiah? Is the party right here? It's a Saturday night. It's got to be, the party has got to be right here. Freebird Tony, I hope you are online with us, watching us now, because we're getting ready to go down your excellent list here. All studs of safeties. Safety is a very unique position anyway. Safety is the last line of defense in the NFL when it comes to defenses. If you look at Major League Baseball, you got the outfielders. Those general guys tend to be, I'm not going to compare them to safeties, but they're out there because that ball can go deep and they need to intercept that ball and keep it from going over the wall or hitting the ground where runners can keep running. So NFL safeties, like I said, I played it in high school. And once again, it's a center field position. And, you know, you can't go wrong. It's deep half. If you got two safeties back there, depending on what kind of defense you're playing, you're going to cover deep half. If not, they'll have a single safety back there. And they'll have a single safety back there guarding all of the deep half of the field. So, Isaiah, before we get started, you got anything to discuss about this list? About what?
There was no scrutiny in it. I love it. I said that I want to go over it with you tonight, and let's get it happening because I looked at it and I didn't find no replacement. So let's have at it.
Absolutely. By all means. So let's get this thing off the charts onto the ground. I got right here. We are going to go top to bottom. So we're going to go from the number 1 to the number 10, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you, Isaiah?
Yes.
Okay. So Freebird Tony released this list, and his number 1 pick of a GOAT of all time for safety is Edward Reed. Edward Reed played safety at University of Miami. He was an impactful safety. I mean, he was part of that Butch Davis recruitment class that Butch Davis rebuilt Miami into a powerhouse back when Miami was down on its luck. And it had a lot of problems back then with with violations within the program, which was not a lot of people's fault, but the program got hit hard and they needed to bring the type of players back in there that would give the traditional Miami style play. Reed comes out of Louisiana and he's a ball hawker. And if you don't know what ball hawking means, he's the type of safety that he plays the whole field. In other words, he watches the quarterback, but he's watching everything on the field. And he was part of that magnifying University of Miami defense that was the number one in the nation for years running. It had the likes of Jonathan Vilma, it had the likes of Dan Morgan, and I can name off a few more, but Ed Reed stuck out to me the most, and Freebird Tony the most. And it looks as though like he went in the draft to the Baltimore Ravens, and he had a really phenomenal career as a Raven. He won a Super Bowl ring, and he was the NFL all-time interception leader for return yards because he'd pick it and he'd go 6. When he picked 6, he turned into a receiver / running back. He didn't just pick 6 it and then try to get to a certain level on the field. He went all the way to the house. So Isaiah, what do you think of this pick at number 1 by Freebird Tony of Ed Reed?
Well, he was spot on with it because Ed Reed, man, he's a Hall of Famer. You didn't mention that because that's that was the plateau of him. He's had all this signature way of looking. He always have his hair all wild and nappy and stuff like that. That was his signature look. But he was a monster on the field, man. He just was a guy who smelled the ball. You threw that ball up there or the wrong way, he's going the other way with it. And he just energized the defenses he's on. When he was in Miami, he energized the defense. When he went to the Ravens, he just energized the defense. He made all these guys play better. And then he had another cane on the defense with him, with Ray Lewis when he was with the Ravens. So, man, he just made everybody on that defense along with him just a better player. So that number 1 pick, I can clearly see why he picked him because he's a phenomenal player. Yeah.
Well, Tony is very familiar. Freebird Tony is very familiar with Miami sports. He grew up in Miami just as Isaiah and myself grew up in Miami. He's a total Miami. He's a 305 guy, just like Isaiah always states. Tony is a 305 guy. We're so glad to have Tony. Tony just joined us in the comments section. We're so glad to have you aboard, Tony. Man, we love you to death here. So Ed Reed was your number 1 pick. We totally agree with you. Not because he played for University of Miami, but more so because of his athletic ability, talent-wise, and his athletic IQ. His football IQ was nearly at the top of the key. And a lot of other safeties were, but I just have to say Ed Reed stuck out from the rest because Ed Reed has always been Ed Reed, and he was the type of safety that he would bring a blow with along with the interception if he got a chance to hit you. He wasn't afraid to make a hard tackle on some of the defensive backs, And when he did make a tackle, like I can remember when Miami was playing UCLA, and I think UCLA was number 2 in the country. And Miami was making that comeback. They had to have this game to get back on the map. Edgerrin James was running his tail off on the offensive side of the ball. And then Ed Reed was leading that defense along the way. And Ed Reed hit one of those UCLA receivers. And, man, you could hear it up in the Orange Bowl stands. I mean, seriously, he lit that guy up. And to me, that would introduce me to Ed Reed for the safety that he was. And he was a field general back there. He called alignments on defense back there, along with, the linebackers and whoever was the captain of the defense. So you nailed it, Tony, on this first one. And we're going to go to the second one. How about number 2, Ronnie Lott? So Ronnie Lott was an all-pro safety, USC graduate. He played back in the backfield with Dennis Smith. Him and Dennis Smith was in that USC backfield back at the Trojans' highest peak in the 80s. And Ronnie Lott was the type of safety that he didn't hold back. I mean, since Ed Reed could tackle, but Ronnie Lott was an enforcer. I would say Ronnie Lott was more of an enforcer than any other safety that I've seen. And there was a lot of enforcement safeties in the league. But Ronnie Lott would come up and he would impose his presence on an offensive receiver. So, in other words, Ronnie Lott would send a message out to any receiver that if you stepped and ran your route, he was back there lurking somewhere. And he was going to pretty much knock you out. I've seen Ronnie Lott hit guys so hard, he knocked himself out. I mean, I've seen him hit a Detroit Lions receiver back in the 80s, and both of those guys was flat. They were lying flat because they were both injured when he hit the guy. So, Isaiah, tell me what you think about Freebird Tony's number 2 pick of Ronnie Lott.
Ronnie Lott hit like a damn linebacker, man. That guy didn't take no prisoners. Ronnie Lott was a guy who pursued that ball with a certain aggression. And it wasn't just the receivers now. I seen him clock some running backs too.
I seen him clock running backs too. Yes.
Yes, man. He brought that wood, bro. I mean, he was a guy who open field tackle you with all the form that you use as a tackler. He used all the form. I mean, with the shoulders, with the face mask, and with the way he broke down. I mean, textbook type of tackles Ronnie Lott used to bring, and you know, for his entire career, I just enjoyed watching him play, man, because he actually will greet you, but he wasn't a dirty player at all. He just will bring you down. He wasn't a guy who was trying to hurt you. He wasn't that type of guy, but he's bringing that wood when he's coming. So, you know, he had a great career. Yeah, I think that number 2 pick is sufficient.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of safeties back in that time were, I call them throwback safeties in a way. In today's NFL, those safeties would have to show some restraint the way that they came up and laid guys out, because now the NFL has so many rules in place for safety purposes of protecting a defenseless receiver, a defenseless quarterback, and a lot of the plays that Ronnie Lott made when he was playing would probably be targeting calls. Some of them. I'm not saying all of them would be, but a lot of the ways that he came up and he laid a blow on a receiver on like a post play, post pattern, or anything else, he probably would have been at some point flagged for that. Would you think so?
Yeah. Some of these plays, I think they exaggerate these targetings. I think they exaggerate a lot, you know, especially if you bias and you want your team to go and you can see there's something where you can call. You know, they just go overboard with a lot of the targeting. And I think the way some of the officials call these targeting, it can actually get these players injured if they choose a other way of tackling. Because I played linebacker and I know how to tackle someone. You don't have to spear them. That's the targeting when you use the dome of your helmet to hit somebody, because that actually can hurt the person that you're tackling, and it can break your own neck when you tackle somebody, because you're coming in with the dome on your head, which is bringing all your body weight with you. So when you go in on somebody, you got your body weight going into somebody's rib cage or helmet or whatever the case may be, and you can hurt you and the person that you're tackling.
Exactly.
So that was one of the things that I just feel like they exaggerate on when it comes to targeting.
Absolutely. So we have a comment from Tony here. It says Ronnie Lott's toughness was off the chains. Totally agreeable. Heck, he cut off part of one of his fingers to stay in the game. I do remember that moment when Ronnie Lott told the doctor and the team trainer just to clip it. I mean, because he wanted to stay in that game. He played with a lot of pain. And I remember he had that big, huge cast type of roll on his arm on his hand after that because, after he played again, because that finger would never healed and it's part nub right now. So just his courageousness to be able to, make that commitment and to make that sacrifice for his team to stay in that game because he was a big intricate part of that San Francisco defense was a big, big deal back in that time because San Francisco was a dynasty and the defense had a lot to do with that. A lot of people talk about Montana in the offense, but it was Ronnie Lott in the defense, along with my man Jeff Fuller. Jeff Fuller was a safety back there with him, and Jeff Fuller got injured, and I think he was partially injured, paralyzed to a point where he couldn't play anymore. But man, those two guys back there, boy, they used to bring the heat. I can tell you that for sure. So let's move to number 3. Freebird Tony has Troy Polamalu, another USC graduate, another USC star safety. And Troy Polamalu, to me, was somewhat undersized because I saw him in person one time. He looked bigger in his pads, but he played a lot bigger than his size was. And he was just the type of safety where wherever the ball was, Troy Polamalu was there. So, Isaiah, what do you think about Troy Polamalu's impact on Pittsburgh's defense and his total impact over his career when he played football for the Steelers? Because, man, he was a special type of safety, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was a special kind of player as a whole, man. I mean, he had so much charisma and finesse about him. Everybody thought he was handsome. He had the long, pretty hair, and now even to today, he's doing hair commercials and stuff like that. But he just looked like a pretty boy, but he played rugged. He was a guy who smelled the ball, and he would always be somewhere around the ball, man. And the guy just was a big asset to the Pittsburgh defense, man. And he would, like you said, he wasn't that big at all. He was a relatively small guy, but his play was off the rails because he just had that net of being like a nuisance to a damn offense, man. You can't throw the ball anywhere in this direction, though, and he's going to interfere with the ball. If he didn't intercept the ball, he's going to make you cough it up, or you just ain't going to gain too much about it, man. It's still a joy to watch this guy's career. Yeah.
Polamalu reminded me a lot in comparison to Air Reed because they were the type of safeties that they would bait a quarterback into thinking that they weren't in position to close and break on the ball. And these two guys were always there to break on the ball. And Troy Polamalu stuck out. I mean, like you said, Isaiah, he was always right where the ball was going to. If a quarterback dropped into his 3-step drop and he threw it in any direction, Troy Polamalu usually had a step on the receiver and the ball to get there either at the perfect time to make the tackle or at the perfect time to intercept it. And he would run it back too, because I've seen him do several pick sixes over his career. He was a special type of safety, and that was an excellent pick from Freebird Tony for the 3rd slot because, he played at that level at USC, and he just carried it right over into the NFL for Pittsburgh, and he'll never be forgotten as well. So let's move on to number 4, Paul Krause. Paul Krause was a really unique safety in his time. He still holds the NFL record for 81 career interceptions, and he played for Washington and Minnesota. And his longevity was just a separation from the rest. Paul Krause, he made an instant impact on being able to be a very dominant safety in the sense where he was always where the ball was as well to make those tackles and to be able to make those interceptions. Because if you got 81 career interceptions, that sticks out to me, over his career. Because a lot of times with safeties in the NFL, even to this modern day safety position, they make interceptions, but they don't make the interceptions with those type of numbers. I mean, even over a 10-year career or 12-year career, they just don't make those type of numbers with interceptions. Would you agree, Isaiah?
Yeah, and without a doubt, I mean, those numbers will never be broken. I mean, the way of a defense right now is no way. You got to play 30 years to catch his numbers. I mean, this guy was a guy who was he quietly did a good job. He quietly did his job. His name wasn't like big like Paul Mallow and Ed Reeves and those guys. You barely knew, but he was a guy who just quietly make an impact on the game. So I can't see anybody breaking his record because it's just quarterbacks are too good now to be throwing those kind of
I know.
interceptions.
Isn't that the
You know,
truth?
another thing,
Isn't
yes,
that the truth?
they do. Yeah.
And he did it in a time where he kind of revolutionized the position in a lot of ways. He was in the Hall of Fame class of 1998. He played 16 seasons with 81 interceptions. That's special to me. Honestly, it is. It's special. And Freebird Tony made an excellent pick with Paul Krause being at number 4. That you hit home with that one, Tony. Let's move on to number 5, which is Donnie Shell, safety for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot of people may not remember Donnie Shell, but Donnie Shell remembers everybody else, especially on that offense, right? So what's your most fondest moment of Donnie Shell, Isaiah? Tell me that. The 4 Super Bowls that they played against Dallas, right?
Somewhat. I remember those, but Donnie Shell was a headhunter too, man. You know, guys was watching where he was. They was looking where he was lined up because Donnie Shell used to bring that hat, man.
He
I
did.
used to
He
just look
did.
at the scars on his helmet. Well, you know how when these guys they take the helmet off and they put the helmet down, you just look at the scars on his helmet where he was knocking the crap out of people, and you
Yes.
see the damages on his helmet, man. He played with the steel curtain, man, and Donnie Shell and those guys had a slew of good people on that defense, man. You had Ming Joe Green and the rest of those guys on that team, and they were the steel curtain. And Donnie Shell was a big part of those championships, man, because they felt like you're not throwing on them, you know, and
Exactly.
just to watch those guys play at that time as a kid, a small kid, and idolize some of the guys on that team, it was something else. And now to have him on this list of all time is feasible. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, like I said earlier, Tony hit home with a lot of these players, and we're going to keep going down the list. But Donnie Shell was special. He was back there in that Steelers secondary of Mel Blount. Just like you mentioned, they had Mean Joe Green, they had Dwight White, Jack Lambert. Jack Lambert,
Mhm.
and I'm switching positions here, but Jack Lambert was an undersized linebacker, and he was an inside linebacker, and he was tenacious, man. You didn't want this guy staring you down on the offensive side of the ball. I know Tony Dorsett and all those guys, when the Steelers played them guys, they were probably thinking that, look, I got to be on the lookout for Donnie Shell, and I got to be on the lookout for definitely Jack Lambert, because Jack Lambert, he
Yeah,
stick
Jack,
his nose and
he
head into
was
anything.
scary.
And
He was
yeah,
scary. He was ugly. He had raggedy ass teeth. I mean, he was, he was a scary guy. Man. It was something else with them guys, man.
yeah,
And he had
absolutely.
these huge shoulder pads that made him look like he was bigger than what he really was.
Yeah, he did. Jack Lambert wore some really large shoulder pads. But
Hmm.
to stress on what you said earlier about Donnie Shell, man, he was psych a quarterback out. I mean, Roger Staubach, when he played against him, Roger Staubach was always going to be, a clutch type of quarterback. But Donnie Shell and Blunt and all those guys, they knew exactly what Drew Pearson, with those guys, Golden Richards, Preston Pearson, Billy Joe Dupree, all those guys were on that Dallas offense. And I'm speaking mainly for those Super Bowl years that Pittsburgh was able to control those guys on defense, and Donnie Shell was a huge, huge part of that. He was really he made a difference. He was a difference maker for sure. So let's move on to this next one, and that is Deron Cherry. A lot of people don't remember Deron Cherry, but Deron Cherry played for Kansas City. And Deron Cherry, to me, was one of the best defensive backs, if not the best defensive back for Kansas City in the history of that franchise. And there was a lot of good defensive backs to come out of Kansas City. But Deron Cherry, he set a precedence, man. He stuck it out there. He stuck everything on the line. He had 50 career interceptions over his career. And, you know, his leadership and his style of play helped motivate other players on that Kansas City defense back then to play better, because, you know, you get players like Ed Reed and Donnie Shell and these guys, Ronnie Lott, Troy Polamalu, they make the players around them play better, if that makes sense. So what did you see special about Deron Cherry, Isaiah, that made him stick out on that Kansas City roster from the rest?
He's special, man. You know, when you got a guy who plays safety but actually can play corner, he can play everything in that secondary.
Correct.
And then now he had that weird name of having a cherry on top. You know, he will be on the top of you.
That's true.
Ron Cherry was a hell of a player, man. I mean, as a youth, to listen to him and watch him on Sundays, and, you know, it was a joy to see these guys play as a kid. It motivates you to see which kind of position that you wanted to play as you grow up. You know, I wanted to play linebacker because of Lambert and some of the good linebackers at the time, and Ham and all those guys. It made me want to play linebacker, but then I was so fond of Tony Dorsett, and made me want to switch over to running back, because Dorsett was a smooth operator, man.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you had the Herschels and the Bowles, and the rest of them came later on.
Right.
But getting back to Deron Cherry, he just was a great athlete, man. And these guys are commended, you know, in their position, because, you know, safety is one of the most important parts of that defense, because if you get past safety, that's it.
That's it. They're the last line of defense, right?
Yes, and they help out on both sides if you only got one of them. You know, I love to have two safeties, because they can back up the cornerback on one side and he has to worry about on the other end of the ball. But if you only got one, that means he's got to roam what's necessary. Mm-hmm. And he was one of the ones that carried that thing through. He was the guy who was always in the way on forward offense. He will be in the damn way.
Yeah, for sure. And he went to the Pro Bowl quite often back in his time. It looks like in the 80s, he grabbed 6 Pro Bowl berths from 1983 to 88, including 5 as a starter in the game. He was selected to the Chiefs' 25-year all-time team back in 87. And he entered the pro ranks as a rookie free agent punter, making him one of the most successful free agents in the history of the NFL, because he became an all-pro safety the way that we explained that he did, you know. He was the owner of 100 tackle seasons, 600 tackle seasons. He played in 148 career games, and he had 927 tackles with 50 interceptions, 15 fumble recoveries, and 3 touchdowns. Man, that is beyond me, that you can accomplish that many accomplishments in that position, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, technically, it's amazing how some of these players have evolved into, from the time that the safety position was created on the defense to the time that it is now. So let's move on to John Lynch. Man, John Lynch, listen. John Lynch was the spearhead of that Tampa Bay's secondary and that defense. He's back there with Derek Brooks and all those guys. And he really made a heavy impact in that Super Bowl win that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers basically won against the Oakland Raiders at the time. And he was part of the success of that Tampa 2 defense that Tony Dungy, somewhat architect, created back in that time. John Lynch was the type of guy. He was more of a Ronnie Lott style hitter to me. Who did he remind you most of, Isaiah?
he was gruesome, man. You could mix him up with several of them, man. I mean, even Efferson Walls and those guys like that. You could anybody who come up there and lay that wood like John Lynch. He actually was like a linebacker to me, a little
To me,
small
exactly.
linebacker.
He
Because
reminded me very much of a linebacker. He was a
yeah,
big enough
man,
safety to come up into the box to play linebacker, if that made sense.
it does. He looked like a little Zach Thomas, so to speak,
Yeah.
because he would be smelling that ball. And if you find your way to wiggle around that linebacker and think you're getting ready to head for a touchdown, and here come Lynch, bam!
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, they better come break out the smelling sauce for you because man, that guy would hit you. And I remember the moments leading to the Super Bowl where they were in like a dogfight, and he would be speaking to the team during, when they call a timeout,
Mm-hmm.
and he just hyped up the defense. His word just hyped up the defense. His play motivated these guys because
Yes.
he was always a guy who was upbeat. He was ready to go. And he just, even when he retired, it was like a sad day when he
It
retired.
was.
DC,
It
man, you said,
was.
oh shit, we're not gonna see him no more, man. What's going on? But man, the guy had a beautiful career, man,
He
and I
did.
never
He
known
did.
him to be out, hurt, or none of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the most memorable moment of John Lynch that I had was when they were in that Super Bowl against the Oakland Raiders, and you had Jerry Rice on that Raiders offense back then, and Lynch them. They kept him in check because Rich Gannon was the quarterback for the Raiders at the time, and Rich Gannon had a pretty decent career as a quarterback in the league, especially playing for the Raiders. But John Lynch was a field general as a safety back there, and he was equally as aggressive when it came to his tackling style. That it just separated him from the rest, and they showed a couple of sideline, pans when he was talking to several of his teammates, and he turned around and he said, "Man, look, the alignments that they lined up with, we practiced all week. We knew exactly what they were getting ready to do, and we were
Yeah.
right there on top of them." And Brooks was a special type of
Mhm.
linebacker as well. And then you had
Mhm.
Warren Sapp, Booger McFarland, Chidi
Man,
Ahana, all those guys played on that Tampa defense. And when they unleashed, a quarterback usually didn't have that much time to throw. And when he threw it to a
you
receiver
better
and he
be.
got clocked,
Yeah,
by
if you
guys like
pump fake
Lynch.
that ball, they got you. And that was their
Exactly.
motto. You pump fake one time, we got you.
That's
I
it.
heard Warren Sapp say that many a times.
Right.
All you have to do is pump fake. You pump fake, he got you, bro. That means you got to be getting rid of that football. That's
Exactly.
that means.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that was a big. He made a big impact in the league. John Lynch did, and he was an equally as nice person because I remember when Herman Edwards was talking about when his son was down in Florida because Herm used to be a defensive back coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then I think Herm ended up going up to New York, but John Lynch and his wife took in Herm's son, and they took care of his son just like they were his parents. So Herm was really appreciative of that. He's a graduate of Stanford. He was the 82nd pick of the third round in the 1993 draft. And look what his career flourished into on top of what he's doing now as the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers. And I think he has done a fantastic job with San Francisco. They haven't made it
Yeah.
to and won a Super Bowl, but I think he's done a really good job as a general manager for the San Francisco 49ers. So, Tony, that was another excellent pick right there. Let's go with Jake Scott. You remember Jake Scott, Isaiah, right?
Yeah.
Jake Scott was on
Yeah.
that Dolphins defense, that
Yeah.
vaunted Dolphins
Mhm.
defense,
Yeah.
and they were relentless back then. They had other guys, Nick Bonacani and all those guys on that defense, and Manny Fernandez and all of those Dolphins. Those Dolphins heroes, man. They were legendary. A lot of them on that team, but Jake Scott stuck out because he was another ball hawk of his time. I would say.
Yeah.
And he was a 5-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl most valuable player, and he was part of that 17-0 season for the Miami Dolphins. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's legendary. When you even see these old guys come back to the stadium, especially when it comes in terms of the 1972 Dolphins, you can never ever forget that, man. Even though I thought that I was going to see some teams better and I see somebody break that record, that just goes to show you how difficult it is to be undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
It was only a couple teams that came close to that. Two,
Mm-hmm.
in fact,
Mm-hmm.
only two teams came that close,
Right.
which is Chicago and the Colts, man. But otherwise, nobody else came close. I mean, you talking about teams that, like Kansas City, has won multiple championships, even back-to-back championships, but they wasn't undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and to play on an undefeated team, that's special, man. All in itself, that's special. I played on an undefeated team before, and dude, when you look back at it and say, "Wow, we had a perfect season," it just don't happen that often. It
Mm-hmm.
just don't.
That's
And
true.
to see and to get a person, and it goes to show you how many really, really good players has to be on that team, and how many things that just have to connect to be on an undefeated team. You know how many things you actually got to do right? You
That's
got to
true.
have some damn good coaches. You got to have some superb players, and everything need to unite. It has to gel to
Mm-hmm.
become undefeated. And that's why you don't
Absolutely.
see it that often, because you got to be mistake free, and every facet of the game has to be good, because it's a chess match out there. And then if you don't have a good special teams, you can fool around and lose a game. So, man, I think that was a hell of a pick, man,
I do
because you're
too.
starting to dig deep. You start digging deep where either you was really, really small, or some in cases you wasn't even born and recognize you got a guy like Jake Scott that's on this list.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. So
yeah,
Tony commented and said Jake Scott, the first number 13 for the Dolphins, because Dan Marino was the
yeah,
second
no,
number
we know.
13,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
both of them are to be legendary for the Dolphins, of course. The one thing Jake
yeah.
Scott has on his side, though, he has a Super Bowl championship and he
Yeah,
has a 17 and
Marino,
0 season. So Marino
yeah,
wasn't able to produce those legacy accomplishments, but I tell
yeah.
you
He went
what,
to the Super Bowl, but he didn't win.
but they didn't win. So he was the first number 13 for the Dolphins, had 49 picks in a relatively short career of 9 years from 1970 to 1978. That's impressive.
Mhm.
That's completely
Yeah,
impressive. And he was the
mhm.
most valuable player in a Super Bowl, 7, I
Yeah.
believe it was,
Still,
if I'm pronouncing these
and
Roman
that's
numerals
difficult.
right.
That's on defense. Yeah,
Yeah, so that was a
yeah,
good pick,
especially
Tony. One thing I want to go back up and mention that Tony said, that he said that coming up with number 7 through 9 was pretty much interchangeable. However, one can put Tatum or Scott at 7, or Lynch at 8 or 9, etc. I like the list the way you got it. I think it's great. I really do, in the order that you have it in, because to me, everything looks good and measured up to me for that. Um, so let's move on to Jack Tatum at number 9. So what do you think about Jack Tatum being at number 9, Isaiah? They call him the assassin.
he was an assassin,
Ex
man.
Ohio
Jack Taylor
State
was, dude.
graduate. He looked really skinny on the field though back then. I mean, a lot of players back then didn't have a lot of muscle on them like they do now. But
Yeah, the
that
thing
dude
is,
would
was
bring a
he,
hit. He just didn't have. He would sacrifice his body just to take someone else
everything.
out. Period.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, I was talking about how some of these guys who, like Polamalu, who played with a certain degree of aggression, but didn't try to hurt. But Jack Taylor was trying to hurt
Oh, he was trying to
you.
take you off this planet. To me.
Jack Taylor was trying to knock you unconscious, man.
Mm-hmm.
He set out to knock you unconscious because he brings everything. I've never seen this guy where he was grabbing at you and all this crap. He wanted to put his body on you, man. Jack Tatum had guys looking the hell is he doing all this kind of crap? Is he in here on this play? Because
Yeah,
when he comes at you, bro, he's bringing everything. Now, I guarantee you, if he was playing in today's game, he would get tossed. Get out of here. Get
yeah.
out of here.
Especially for
Because
some of the
he
hits that
was,
he had back in his time. I mean, that Daryl Stingley hit. He didn't intend to hurt Stingley, but unfortunately, Stingley did get injured, and Jack Tatum made the hit on him. So that I guess Tatum had to live with that the rest of entire life. I mean,
yeah,
knowing that the guy never recovered from the injury that he sustained in that
yeah,
game when New England was playing Oakland at the time.
yeah, yeah. His name just sounded like he was rugged. When we were
Mm-hmm.
kids and hear his name called Jack Tatum, like just to hear his name sound vicious.
Yes.
And he just really played the game with everything, man. As a DB, he remind me of freaking Lawrence Taylor, man, as a
Sure.
DB,
Sure.
because he played all out, man. And his tackling, the one-on-one
His
tackling,
tackling
he didn't
style
need a
was
gang.
very
Yeah,
aggressive.
he didn't
Yes.
need a gang of guys to help bring you down. He coming at you one-on-one, open field. He gonna nail you, bro. So yeah, I'm glad he's in that top 10.
I want to say he was
I
part
was
of that
glad
play
to know it.
where Pittsburgh was playing the Raiders, and whichever one of those teams won was going to the Super Bowl, and they were playing in Three Rivers Stadium at the time. And Swan went across the middle, and Bradshaw threw Swan the pass, and I want to say it was Jack Tatum was the one that came
Yeah,
up and leveled Swan out. The ball went airborne. Franco Harris was in the right place. He happened to be in the right place at the right time. He caught it, scooped it, and ran it in for a touchdown, right? And the rest is
the
history. The
slowest keeper.
Steelers went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, slowest Harris was.
And Jack
Franco was
Tatum
slow.
was an intimidating type of safety where he made a receiver think about a post play, or any receiver, any play running
Yeah,
back there into that secondary. You were always trying to figure out where is he
where he
going to
is.
be,
Because he's gonna clock you, man. I'm telling you,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this guy clock folks all night, man, and
Yes.
he was bringing the wood. He would bring that wood, man, and guys was actually scared of him, scared of him.
Yeah.
Shoot,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So that was another good pick for sure. So let's go to the final number 10 pick, and that is going to be Dennis Smith. Look, Tony, I can totally agree with you with Dennis Smith, man. Dennis Smith was one of my favorite players back at the time in the 80s and the 90s when he played in that backfield with Steve Atwater back in the Denver Broncos secondary. Dennis Smith
yeah,
used to bring the noise. He used to bring the heat.
yeah,
And he didn't get a
yeah,
lot of airplay like Ronnie Lott and all those other safeties did. But, man, he was part of that vaunted Denver Broncos defense that if you threw that ball back there to a receiver, that receiver had to be on notice that either Dennis Smith was going to take him off and get him onto the ground really hard, or Steve Atwater was going to get him onto the ground really hard. And Dennis Smith, he was a special type of safety. He was aggressive. He was quick to come up, and he'd come up into the box and play in a heartbeat. He didn't care about worrying about making tackles because he made tackles up into the box as well as he did in the deep half of the field the way he did. He's an icon, 6-time Pro Bowler with over 1,100 tackles and 30 interceptions. And he was respected for his toughness because, he played through injuries as well, like a lot of other safeties did. Like Ronnie Lott played with that finger. Dennis Smith played through a lot of injuries as well. And he led that vaunted defense for USC at the time when USC was one of the top teams in college football back then. They had Denver was a tight team even back then. They weren't winning a lot of Super Bowls, until Elway got there and they started winning those Super Bowls. But I tell you what, Dennis Smith was a hard hitting safety, and I have nothing but respect for him, to tell you the truth. Do you have any other comments about Dennis Smith, Isaiah?
Well, no, I want to tell you how superb this list was because I was thinking of other people to replace some of these folks, but the list was so tight, man. I just couldn't shift nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
what
And
a
you said that
superb
when I
list,
first sent you the
man.
list. Remember a
Yeah,
couple of days ago, I
yeah,
sent you the list and you were just
yeah.
immediately just popped off. Man, this list, that's a pretty tight
I,
list. I have no
yeah,
comment.
yeah.
I have no issue with that list, just like I didn't
The,
have any
the
issue
only
with the
way,
list as
the
well.
only, yeah, the only way I could have transferred another player in there because I started thinking about each person's body of work.
Hmm.
The only way you could have messed with this list is you start saying who was the hardest hitter
Hmm.
safety, the top 10 hardest hitting. Then you would kind of shift the people around. But to just look at the body of work where a guy's getting 80 something interceptions and playing for 16 years and stuff like that, when you look at the body of work of all of these top 10 players, you don't mess with it. But if you
Exactly.
just was going to characterize these things and saying who was the hardest hitter, who got this, then you can kind of shift it around. But the entire body of that safety list, where
Hmm.
you say, okay, what kind of player was he? Then you just wash your hands. Is a good list. Just
Right.
going about your business.
Right.
So, what a good job. What a good
Absolutely.
job.
It looks like Tony commented and said it was tough leaving out Atwater at top 10. I totally get it. I mean, and Dick Anderson was another one that got left out on this list because Dick Anderson was a very impactful safety as well in the league. A lot of people may not
Yeah.
remember him, but I do remember Dick Anderson in the
Yeah,
name for sure.
even the hardest hitting stuff, and I started thinking about Lewis Oliver for the Dolphins, and
Hmm.
I started thinking about all of these players. But then when you look at the entire body of work, when these guys got freaking 80 something interceptions, that's the reason why you couldn't bring any of these other guys into the fold because of how long they either played or their stats. You mean so you just leave the list alone? Yep.
Yeah, another one that I liked a lot, safety wise back then, especially in the 80s, was David Fulcher for the
Yeah.
Cincinnati Bengals. David
Hmm.
Fulcher was technically a linebacker playing safety back there. He was one of the biggest safeties of his time, size wise, to play the position. He was. Whew, if I was a receiver, I would definitely be looking around for a guy like David Fulcher as well, because he was a very impactful safety. But overall, like you said about Tony's list, man, his list is really a good list. I can't say enough about it. We're so happy that he took his time out to really, because it took a lot of deep thought for Tony to be able to put this list together, because it's not easy just throwing names together like that. He had to do his
No,
homework on
not
this
when you
list
go
and
into the
research.
70s and all these older guys when, either you were either not born or you were small,
Hmm.
because you dig into the 70s and the 80s and stuff like that, you really got to understand football to come up with a list like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And Tony's, like I say, he's a 305 guy. So he grew up in Miami just like we did. He lives in California and he's been back and forth to Miami. So Tony, we're gonna have to get together, you and I, and then one day we'll all get together down at Miami and have a tailgate for a Canes
Yeah.
game and a Dolphins
Yeah.
game. We can do
That's a
that. We can
good
do
thing.
both. I
Yeah.
mean, because we'd love to
Yeah.
have you aboard. And we want another
Mhm.
list. Put together another list for us because we're always open to lists. We're talking about doing a tight ends list. I think Isaiah, you're going to cover that tight ends list for us
Yeah.
of the
We're gonna do a tight end,
top
and
10
yeah,
best tight ends list
we're
of
gonna
all
try to
time
cover
goats.
every position. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll put together a list of GOAT teams of all time for college football. So that can go all the way back to the early 80s when Miami was a dynasty on up into now which was the most dynastic teams in college football over the last 40 plus years, right? Because you know the
What we really
Alabamas
want to
and
do with that DC is be mindful of our ages and stuff like that because I want
Mhm.
to put together a list when we start talking about the college and who's the best out of it. I want to say when I can actually see it myself. I don't
Right.
want to go on to these teams that I don't know anything about, had no idea about, it, didn't see it myself unless you get a computer and start digging up all that foolishness. I don't
Mhm.
want to do that. I want to see the best team that I know and seen with my own eyes as opposed to trying to dig up stats from people who was playing before we were even born. I don't
Correct.
want to put them in there. We want to see the best
That's
team
why I
that we know.
mentioned the 80s kind of like
Yeah,
because you know if you
yeah,
look at how Howard Schnellenberger constructed that
yes.
team and they started out
Yep.
winning back in the early
hmm
80s, you know,
hmm
you can't we don't want to go any deeper further back than that, right?
Yes. Right. 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 Because we want to look. We want to compare what we see with our own eyes, as opposed to start letting computers lie to us.
Yes.
Because that's
Yes.
what it'll do. I want
Exactly.
to see the team that we actually know about. We've seen with our own eye. We grew up watching. That's what we want to do, man.
Yep. That's
And
right.
then it's authentic. There's an authentic list instead of just digging up somebody else's stuff and
That's
reading off of it. I want to just remember the things that we've seen. And I can very well remember some of those big games with the Florida States, the Oklahomas,
mhm.
the Nebraskas, and the teams like that. I
Mhm.
can never forget those moments, man. Never. I mean,
Absolutely.
never.
Especially
I
those
mean,
Orange Bowl
I
games when they would come to those teams would come down to the Orange Bowl. And you know
Oh
what
man,
was
one of the most memorable games DC in the Orange Bowl was when JC Watts was playing and they was playing Florida State.
mhm.
They was playing for Florida State in the Orange Bowl. It was Oklahoma and Florida State, and Billy Sims and all those guys was on the Oklahoma team, and Herschel Walker was ripping it in Georgia at the time, and they was gonna, on target to be the national championship team, and
Mhm.
and 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 they were hyped up, and J.C. Watts was running that damn wishbone, man,
Oh
and during
yeah.
that time. That dude read that thing smoother than I've ever seen anybody to this very day.
Mhm.
And just to see him now, he don't even look like a football player,
A lot of
man.
them don't. A lot of them don't look
He
like
do
football
not look
players.
like
Don't look
he
like they
played
ever played a
one
down,
down.
you know?
I
Yeah,
mean, he's a
they
little guy. He looks small, and he looked like he never could take a hit. But dude, man, he ran that wishbone so smooth, and he had Billy Sims back there as a tailback, and they ran the crap out of Florida State. I mean, it
yeah.
was a competitive game until the very
Absolutely,
end.
absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
I like
So
Thomas
that's
Lott
what
the
I
way he
love
used
doing.
to run that offense for Oklahoma as well. Thomas Lott was, I
Yeah.
believe, he was there
Mhm.
before J.C. Watts got there, and
Yeah.
Thomas Lott was a hell of an option quarterback as well, wishbone type
Yeah.
of quarterback.
You know,
Um,
another guy who was good at it too, DC, was Turner Gill.
oh yeah, yeah, from
Turner
Nebraska.
Gill. Yes,
Yeah,
man.
he ran that
Yeah.
offense so
He
smooth,
had Mike
man.
Rozier, I think, with him
Oh
at that.
yeah,
When he had
yeah.
Mike Rozier, and what's the receiver name who played for the Dolphins too?
Irvin Fryer.
Urban Fryer. Fryer,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, those guys man, they was amazing. They were
Let
amazing.
me ask you a question, and I want your honest opinion on this question. You think Irvin Fryer dropped that ball he didn't wasn't nothing behind him dropping that ball for that touchdown for Nebraska? Because that
DC,
sealed the game
DC,
for Miami, technically.
DC. Hey man, listen. We see him dropping balls like that all the time today. We see how many times we seen that happen today, bro?
I know.
Damn.
Alabama,
I,
Georgia. I mean, quite
you
a
know
few,
what,
right?
man? I heard all the people claim that Fryer was paid. He did this and
Yeah,
that.
because
I
there
do
was
not
rumors
believe for
that he because Fryer didn't drop footballs back then. I don't remember a time when he dropped a
DC,
football.
DC, let me tell you, when you mention this, it plays in my mind's eye, that same particular play. You know what made Fryer drop that ball?
Ken Calhoun.
Hell no. Hell no. He was trying to be cute, bro, because he was so freaking wide open, and the ball came like this, and it hit his ass in the hip, and it bounced off. He was trying to be cute. I mean, the ball. He was so wide open, man. He did like this here, almost like it was just taunting the DB, and it hit him and ricocheted, man.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that play like
I remember it like it was yesterday as well. Because I watched that game from start to finish.
And
Nebraska was heavily favored to win that game. They was heavily favored to come in there and just destroy Miami. But Miami had Bernie Kosar, they had Rodney Bellinger, they had Eddie Brown, they had Stanley Shakespeare, they had Glenn Dennison, they had all of the great Miami players that we look up to today that helped put our school on the map, man. I mean, they did everything that they needed to do that night to win that football game, you know?
Yeah, man. I just couldn't imagine, really, DC, I just couldn't imagine that was a fluke when he did that intentionally, man, because Irvin Fryer and them had a damn good team too, man.
Oh man, that Nebraska team was destroying teams before they got to Miami.
It was a well-oiled sewing machine, man. They had them big old hogs on that offensive defensive line. Rozier was the Heisman Trophy winner, I think, that year, man.
I think he did win the Heisman Trophy that year. He did.
And yeah, man. And they came to town, and that Orange Bowl was rocking.
Those bleachers was rocking back then,
man. It sounded like the place they gonna bring the house down.
Mm-hmm.
And Fryer dropped that ball, man. And dude, it is amazing how fate bring you. You imagine that, DC, where he dropped that ball and wind up getting drafted and somehow wind up playing for the Dolphins.
I know, because he went to New England initially. They drafted him,
right?
And then he ended up in Miami. He played for Philly for a little while too, I think. I want to say he played for the Eagles, and then he ended up with Miami. But Ken Calhoun was a safety I mentioned because Ken Calhoun batted down the 2-point conversion after Nebraska scored. If they would have got that 2-point conversion, because technically Miami won 31-30. I mean, Jeff Smith was a running back. He was that cat-eyed running back they had, and he ran out into the flat to catch the ball from Turner Gill, and Ken Calhoun came in and he broke up the play. So Ken Calhoun is a hero as well. He was a safety for Miami back in '84 as well.
If anything on one of those guys, you want to tell me about somebody doing something where they threw the game, could be the freaking coach, because they tried to go for that point in where they could have just kicked the field goal. Kick the extra point. They wanted to go for the win. Remember that?
Yeah, because he would have tied it, and it could have potentially went into overtime if they would have.
Right. But they tried to go for the win. You did talk about Tom Osborne.
Yeah,
right?
Tom Osborne. I remember Coach Osborne. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, Nebraska struggled.
Boy.
They struggled the whole game to get their running game dialed up the way they used to do that year with other teams, because they had the likes of Jay Brophy. They had the likes of Bill Hawkins. I mean, I could keep going with these names because these guys on that vaunted Miami defense back then, they are forever heroes of the University of Miami, in my opinion. Offense and defense. They were able to bring us home a national championship.
Snatching back some memories, man.
There's some memories back then. And you know what? I would like each and every one of those players to come on to this show. We're making an invite right now. Bill Hawkins, Jay Brophy, Bernie Kosar, Rodney Bellinger, even the offensive linemen.
Remember Fred Robinson?
Man? I remember Fred Robinson, sure.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Them guys was nuts, bro.
Jack Fernandez. Remember Jack Fernandez?
Yes.
Jack Fernandez ended up coming to our practice. He came to our highly optimist practice, and he talked to the team.
Those guys were some nuts, bro. They were some dogs back then.
Yes, they were.
they did some stuff to make kids happy to see them, man. They would
Mm-hmm.
take off their pads, their stinking, nasty, sweaty pads, and throw them up to the young kids and
That's
stuff.
right.
And man, and that stuff didn't mean nothing because it was nasty, funky, and sweaty. You just wanted those pads, man.
Absolutely.
And these guys didn't care about throwing it up there. These little kids now soft. They stinky. Man, we were glad to get those pads, man. Remember the ones
Exactly.
that you could put over your fist,
Yeah, I remember
DC?
the brown
When you
pads. You used to put them on your
yeah,
elbows and your
yeah,
forearms and stuff.
yeah.
Some of them would take off their donut. They shoulder pad
They
donuts and
would,
throw up
yes,
there. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember that.
yeah,
So
yeah. Those are
this was
the
a
days,
great
man.
show. How you think the show went tonight, partner? I think we did fantastic. I
I'm
think
ready.
Freebird Tony's list was off the charts and
Tony,
fantastic.
man,
Man,
this
we
show
having
was
so
about
much
you,
fun with
man.
this thing, right?
The thing is, we commend Tony, man. Dude, we did a special 10, top 10 show for you specifically, man. So
Absolutely.
listen, man, salute, boy, salute to the guys, man, and just,
Salute to
uh,
Tony too. Yeah,
yeah, man, yeah,
absolutely.
man.
And Tony, we want another list, so just be working on your new list because we gonna keep going over these things. By the way, we're gonna be covering the Miami Florida State game live stream next Saturday. We're gonna have food.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like a tailgate for us. I'm gonna go get me some barbecue. Isaiah's gonna get
Well,
him some food, and we're gonna just have the time of our life here. And
it's a
possibly
family
we might have a
affair.
special guest on the show as well.
It's a family affair. You guys want to eat and chow down while y'all watching the game with us? Do so because we gonna have at it. Because I told you now, I'm gonna have some ribs. I'm gonna have some Pepsi. I'm gonna have some little fries. I may do some sweet potato fries. I may
Ain't
not
nothing
do the
wrong with
potato
that.
fries. Just
Absolutely.
some down there. And I'm gonna have me a nice Caesar salad there. Yep.
Now you're talking. Now you're talking my kind of
Mhm.
talk. But
Yep.
anyway, we will close this show out. Isaiah, you can close us out, please.
Yes. Hey, listen, phenomenal show. List Tony, the list was on point. You guys, we here. We entertaining, clearly entertaining. This is what this thing is all about. You guys love on your family, respect one another, pray for the country as a whole so we can do better. But anyway, love, peace, and happiness. Have a pleasant week, you guys. Enjoy some football tomorrow.
Absolutely. I thank Tony, second to that. I thank Tony for taking his time out and coming on to this show and spending the time with us going over his list. We much appreciate it. Make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe button and bring your friends in and tell them about us because we're here to stay. We're not going anywhere. We love what we're doing and this is our passion. So always join us and let us know what you think and everything else. So make sure you help other people, take care of those around you, take care of your family, but you got to take care of yourself first. You got to take care of your mental health. You got to take care of your physical health before you can help anybody else. So take care, peace, love, and prosperity. We will have another show, a weekend recap of the games from the weekend on Monday morning at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. West Coast Time. So take it easy. Peace, love, and prosperity. Take care.